Okay, let's unpack this. How does a comedian, someone whose bread and butter is making us laugh, someone with absolutely no background in the rough and tumble world of politics, end up not just leading an entire nation, but becoming this globally recognized symbol of courage in the face of a brutal, full-scale war?
Yeah.
It almost sounds like a far-fetched movie plot, but it's the very real, incredibly compelling story of Volodymyr Zelensky, and that's precisely what we're diving into today.
It's what's truly remarkable is that element of the unexpected. You know,
Yeah.
here's a figure whose career was built on entertainment, stepping into the most demanding and high-stakes role imaginable
Right, such a critical
at a
moment.
pivotal moment in history.
Yeah.
And then, defying all expectations, he rises to meet an unprecedented challenge.
Yeah.
It really compels you to reconsider where leadership can emerge and what qualities truly matter.
Absolutely. And to really get our heads around this incredible journey, we've got a fascinating resource, an English language learning text that focuses on the story of Volodymyr Zelensky's life and leadership. Now, don't let the learning English part give you the wrong idea. This is a surprisingly detailed account, offering us a fantastic, accessible foundation to understand the key moments and the underlying factors that shaped him.
Right.
Think of it as a really well-structured and digestible deep dive itself into a truly extraordinary narrative.
Exactly. It gives us a clear narrative thread, allowing us to trace the progression of his life, identify the crucial turning points, and understand the context that informed his actions. If we connect this to the bigger picture, it's about understanding how an individual from a seemingly unrelated field could be thrust into unimaginable circumstances and possess the fortitude not just to endure, but to inspire on a global scale.
So our mission for this deep dive is clear: to understand this improbable ascent of Volodymyr Zelensky, to really explore his leadership during this absolutely critical period in global history, and to grasp the lasting impact he's had not only on Ukraine, but on the wider world. We're going to dig deep for those key insights, those aha moments that help us understand the how and the why behind this almost unbelievable transformation.
And it immediately brings up a fundamental question, doesn't it?
Sure.
Was this transformation a sudden event triggered by the invasion, or were there underlying qualities, perhaps even in his earlier life and career, that laid the groundwork for his later leadership?
Well, let's journey back to the beginning then. Volodymyr Zelensky was born on January 25th, 1978 in Kryvyi Rih, which at that time was part of the Soviet Union in central Ukraine. Interestingly, his background wasn't in politics at all. His father was a professor and his mother was an engineer. Not exactly the typical path we might expect for a future head of state, right?
No, not at all. It immediately challenges any preconceived notions of a traditional route to leadership. What's intriguing is that his upbringing appears to be quite distant from the political arena, suggesting that his later trajectory was indeed driven by perhaps unexpected factors and personal qualities.
And it seems language played a subtle but important role early on. He grew up speaking Russian at home, which was common in eastern Ukraine.
Right.
But he also learned Ukrainian at school. This bilingualism, the source material highlights, later proved to be a real advantage in connecting with people across a country with its own complex linguistic landscape and diverse cultural identities.
That's a significant detail. In a nation that has historically navigated internal cultural and linguistic dynamics, the ability to communicate effectively across those divides is, well, it's a foundational element for fostering national unity and effective leadership.
Now, even in his younger years, Zelensky was described as bright, energetic, and crucially possessing a natural comedic flair. He enjoyed books and movies, but that inherent ability to make people laugh seems to have been a real defining characteristic. At that point, political office was likely the furthest thing from his mind. His aspirations lay in acting and performance.
This highlights a core aspect of his early identity. A natural performer, someone who instinctively understands how to engage an audience,
Yeah.
how to connect with them on an emotional level, even if that emotion is laughter.
Right.
This seemingly unrelated skill set would later prove to be an incredibly potent tool in a very different arena.
And this passion for performance led him, as a teenager, to become involved with KVN. Now, for those unfamiliar, KVN was this hugely popular comedy competition across the former Soviet Union.
Ah, yes, KVM.
Think of it as a kind of national improv and sketch comedy league. He and his friends wrote jokes, performed skits, and they were clearly talented because their team actually won national prizes.
So successful early on.
Yeah, so his comedy career wasn't just a fleeting hobby. It was a recognized success and a platform where he honed his skills.
It was in this environment that he truly developed his craft, learned the art of collaboration, and experienced the direct impact of public performance. These are transferable skills that, while honed in a comedic context, would later find application on a much grander and more serious stage.
Interestingly, despite his clear talent and passion for entertainment, he did go on to study law at university.
Oh, right, the law degree.
However, as the source clearly states, he never actually practiced as a lawyer. His true calling remained in the world of show business.
Yeah.
He then went on to form this comedy team called Kvartal 95, and they became a really significant force in Ukrainian entertainment, producing a wide range of shows, movies, and television series. Here's where it gets really interesting.
Because this background in entertainment wasn't just a separate chapter of his life, it directly and in a rather unprecedented way paved the path for his eventual political career.
Exactly.
A trajectory few could have possibly foreseen.
Exactly. In 2015, Kvartal 95 created this television series, Servant of the People. The premise is quite extraordinary. Zelensky played an ordinary, relatable school teacher who unexpectedly becomes the president of Ukraine after a secretly recorded video of him passionately ranting against corruption in society goes viral online.
Such a meta concept, really.
Totally. The show was undoubtedly a comedy, but it also tackled very real and pressing issues in Ukraine: systemic corruption, widespread poverty, and a sense of disillusionment with the existing political leadership themes that clearly deeply resonated with the Ukrainian public.
And this is the crucial point where the lines between fiction and reality begin to blur in a fascinating way.
Yes.
The show wasn't merely entertainment. It tapped into a deep well of public dissatisfaction and a strong yearning for a different kind of leader. Someone honest, authentic, and truly representative of the people's interests. It presented an idealized, albeit fictional, vision of a president who is everything the public felt their current leaders were not.
It's that aha moment for you, the listener, right? This fictional character, this compelling idea of an everyday outsider, suddenly thrust into the presidency and valiantly fighting against corruption.
Yeah.
It wasn't just a source of amusement, it planted a powerful seed in the public consciousness. People started seriously asking that what if question. What if this charismatic and principled guy who so convincingly played a good president on television could actually be a good president in real life?
The show inadvertently became a powerful form of social and political commentary, and, perhaps unintentionally at the outset, a testing ground for Zelensky as a potential leader within the public imagination.
Yeah, it sort of normalized the idea.
It normalized the seemingly radical idea of a non-traditional candidate stepping into the highest office.
And so in 2018, the almost unimaginable happened. Zelensky announced his candidacy for president of Ukraine.
Wow.
The source mentions that initially, many people reacted with laughter and disbelief. I mean, a comedian with no political experience wanting a country, it sounds like a punchline in itself.
Sure, you can see why.
But beneath that initial skepticism, there was this significant undercurrent of people who were genuinely and deeply tired of the established political order and were desperately searching for something, anything, that offered the promise of real change.
Mm-hmm.
They were looking for a glimmer of hope in a seemingly stagnant political landscape.
The initial skepticism was certainly understandable, given his complete lack of any formal political track record. However, that very lack of traditional political experience became a key element of his appeal
Right.
to those who felt disillusioned and disenfranchised by the established political class. He represented a clean slate, an unknown entity that held the potential for genuine change, untainted by the perceived failures of the past.
His campaign was fascinatingly unconventional. He largely eschewed traditional political rallies and the usual campaign infrastructure. Instead, he very effectively leveraged the power of social media.
Yeah, the digital approach.
He communicated directly with potential voters through short, often informal, and highly relatable videos. The source describes his approach as modern, youthful, direct, and simple. And it clearly deeply resonated with a significant portion of the Ukrainian population, particularly younger voters.
Mm-hmm.
His core campaign promises centered on tackling the pervasive issue of corruption and achieving a lasting peace in the long-troubled eastern regions of Ukraine.
His campaign strategy, in many ways, mirrored the very premise of servant of the people, effectively tapping into the same strong anti-establishment sentiment and the widespread desire for an honest and authentic leader.
Totally.
His innovative use of social media allowed him to bypass traditional media gatekeepers, which had often been perceived as part of the existing power structure, and connect directly with voters in a manner that felt personal and unmediated.
Yeah, that direct connection.
This was a significant advantage in mobilizing public support.
And the results of the April 2019 election were nothing short of staggering. He won with an overwhelming majority, securing over 70% of the vote.
70%.
The source calls it one of the most decisive victories in Ukrainian history. A comedian, someone who just a few years prior was making people laugh on television, had become the president of Ukraine with a landslide victory. It's a truly remarkable and almost unbelievable turn of events.
It speaks volumes about the depth of public discontent with the existing political order and the extraordinary power of Zelensky's image as an alternative. It was a clear and resounding mandate for change, albeit one based on a somewhat unprecedented and unconventional foundation.
But as the source rightly emphasizes, that monumental election victory was really just the beginning of an even more challenging journey.
Oh, absolutely.
He now faced the daunting task of actually leading a complex nation, of proving that he could effectively govern, unite a diverse country, and address its deep-seated problems, not just entertain it.
Mm-hmm.
The world, and most importantly the people of Ukraine, were watching his every move with intense scrutiny and high expectations.
The transition from a successful career in entertainment to the immense responsibilities of national leadership is a truly monumental one, demanding a completely different set of skills, a profound understanding of intricate domestic and international issues, and the ability to navigate complex political realities.
Yeah.
The fundamental question hanging in the air was whether the very qualities that had made him a successful entertainer and a popular candidate could effectively translate into the very different demands of effective governance in a deeply complex geopolitical environment.
So he takes office in April 2019 with these ambitious and crucial goals. to eradicate the entrenched corruption that had plagued Ukraine for so long, to tangibly improve the daily lives of ordinary Ukrainian citizens, and perhaps most urgently, to achieve a lasting and sustainable peace in the war-torn eastern regions of the country. As the source reminds us, for years there had been this ongoing and deeply damaging conflict with Russian-backed separatists in the Donetsk and Luhansk regions, and Zelensky made it a top priority to find a way to end the fighting and bring stability to the region.
His initial and very public focus on achieving peace in the East was a direct and powerful response to a key and deeply felt public desire.
Absolutely.
The protracted conflict in the Donbas region had been a long and incredibly painful wound on the nation, causing immense suffering and instability, and the promise of a peaceful resolution carried enormous weight and public expectation.
And there was indeed some initial, albeit cautious, optimism. The source material points to this significant meeting that took place in Paris in 2019.
Right, the Normandy format meeting.
Where Zelensky actually met face-to-face with Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia. They engaged in discussions, they shook hands in front of the international press, and they even reached an agreement on a prisoner exchange.
The small step.
It was undoubtedly a small step forward, but it offered a fragile glimmer of hope that a path towards de-escalation and perhaps even a lasting settlement could be found.
That high-level meeting represented a crucial willingness on Zelensky's part to engage directly, to explore any and all diplomatic avenues that might lead to a peaceful resolution of the conflict. However, it also starkly highlighted the immense and deeply complex challenge of negotiating with a counterpart who may have fundamentally different strategic objectives and a vastly different perspective on the conflict itself.
But unfortunately, that initial hope proved to be somewhat short-lived. The intense fighting in the eastern regions didn't entirely cease. It perhaps lessened in intensity in certain areas, but the underlying conflict remained unresolved.
Yeah.
And back on the domestic front, Zelensky began to encounter significant resistance to his ambitious reform agenda. Corruption, as the source material underscores, remained deeply entrenched within various levels of Ukrainian society and the political system.
Always a huge challenge.
And Zelensky, as an outsider who hadn't risen through the traditional political ranks, now found it more challenging to build the necessary coalitions and political capital to push through his proposed legislative changes.
His very status as an outsider, which had been such a powerful advantage during his campaign, now presented significant obstacles in navigating the complex and often opaque landscape of established Ukrainian politics. Overcoming deeply entrenched vested interests and the inertia of the bureaucratic system is a formidable challenge for any new leader, and Zelensky was confronting this reality head-on.
Despite these considerable challenges and setbacks, he continued to utilize that same direct and engaging style of communication that had proven so effective during his campaign through regular video addresses to the nation, active engagement on social media platforms,
Still connecting directly,
and periodic television appearances. The source material indicates that he maintained a significant level of popularity with many Ukrainians who appreciated his clear and straightforward communication style and his relatable public persona, which stood in stark contrast to the often formal and distant style of traditional politicians.
Maintaining that direct and personal connection with the public remained a crucial element of his leadership strategy, providing him with a vital base of popular support that he could potentially leverage against political opposition and bureaucratic inertia. It also reflected his keen understanding of the evolving media landscape and his adeptness at using it to his advantage in shaping public opinion and maintaining a direct line of communication with the citizenry.
Then, in the early months of 2020, The unforeseen and unprecedented global crisis of the COVID-19 pandemic struck.
Oh, yeah. Another huge test.
And just as in virtually every other nation around the world, Ukraine was woefully unprepared for the scale and impact of this public health emergency. The source material describes a situation characterized by under-equipped hospitals, severe shortages of essential medical equipment and supplies, widespread public fear and uncertainty, significant business closures leading to economic hardship, and an overall slowing of the national economy.
A perfect storm, really.
Zelensky was suddenly forced to rapidly pivot his focus and dedicate his leadership efforts to responding to this completely unforeseen and multifaceted crisis.
The sudden onset of the global pandemic served as a major and unexpected test of his leadership capabilities in a context entirely removed from his initial campaign promises.
Right, peace and corruption.
Of tackling corruption and achieving peace. It required him to make incredibly difficult and often unpopular decisions, to communicate effectively and transparently during a period of immense public uncertainty and anxiety, and to manage a complex public health crisis with severely limited national resources and an already strained healthcare system.
The source material notes his shift to a more consistently calm and serious tone in his national addresses during the pandemic, as well as his efforts to foster a sense of national unity and collective responsibility during the various lockdown measures and public health restrictions. It was undoubtedly an incredibly challenging and uncertain period for the entire nation.
For everyone, everywhere.
But he, as the source states, stayed strong in his public pronouncements and continued to project a message of hope and resilience in the face of widespread adversity.
It demonstrated a different facet of his leadership, highlighting his capacity to adapt to an entirely new and unforeseen type of crisis, to project a sense of stability and reassurance to the public, even amidst overwhelming challenges and a great deal of uncertainty.
Yeah.
It was a form of leadership quite distinct from the policy-focused approach he had initially campaigned on, requiring a greater emphasis on communication, empathy, and crisis management.
But while the nation was grappling with the unprecedented challenges of the pandemic, there was another, much darker and more menacing cloud steadily gathering on the horizon. The source material reminds us that Russia had already unilaterally annexed the Crimean Peninsula from Ukraine back in 2014 and had been actively supporting separatist forces in the ongoing conflict in the eastern Donbas region.
Right, the context is important.
However, beginning in 2021, Russia began a massive and highly visible military buildup along Ukraine's extensive borders. Increasingly large numbers of troops, tanks, armored vehicles, combat aircraft, and other heavy weaponry were being deployed to the border regions, raising alarm and sparking growing international concern about Russia's potential intentions.
This significant and sustained escalation of Russian military presence along Ukraine's borders was a clear and unmistakable signal of Russia's potentially aggressive intentions. Although the full scope and ultimate aims of their military deployments remained a subject of intense speculation and uncertainty for many.
Yeah, a lot of uncertainty.
Even within the Ukrainian government and its intelligence agencies. It marked a profound and dangerous shift in the regional security landscape and placed immense and growing pressure on Zelensky's leadership to navigate this increasingly precarious situation.
Understandably deeply worried by these developments, President Zelensky began to make increasingly urgent appeals to the international community, particularly to Western allies such as NATO and the European Union.
Seeking support.
Seeking concrete expressions of support and tangible security assistance for Ukraine. He stated clearly and repeatedly that while Ukraine remained committed to seeking a peaceful resolution to the ongoing tensions, The nation was also fully prepared to defend its sovereignty and territorial integrity against any potential aggression.
His proactive efforts to seek robust international support were absolutely crucial in raising global awareness of the escalating threat posed by the Russian military buildup and in laying the critical groundwork for the potential provision of defensive aid and diplomatic pressure on Russia. It was a delicate and high-stakes balancing act, attempting to secure meaningful international assistance without inadvertently provoking further aggression from Russia.
And then we come to this incredibly difficult and ethically complex dilemma that President Zelensky faced in the latter part of 2021 and the early weeks of 2022, as intelligence reports from various sources increasingly suggested an imminent, large-scale Russian military invasion of Ukraine.
Yeah, that must have been unbearable.
The source material highlights this truly impossible choice that he had to grapple with. Should he openly and publicly warn the Ukrainian populace about the high probability of an impending attack, thereby risking widespread panic, mass displacement, and significant economic disruption? Or should he opt to downplay the threat in an effort to avoid such potentially destabilizing consequences?
This was an unenviably difficult and high-stakes decision for any national leader to make. Publicly warning the population of an imminent full-scale invasion could have triggered mass fear, widespread chaos, significant economic disruption, and the potential for massive internal displacement of people.
Right, the downsides were huge.
However, choosing to downplay the very real threat carried the equally grave risk of leaving the country and its citizens unprepared for the brutal reality of a large-scale military attack.
So what did he do?
President Zelensky's ultimate decision to maintain a relatively calm public posture was likely driven by a desire to avoid widespread panic and maintain a semblance of economic and social stability, although in hindsight, this decision has been the subject of considerable debate and differing perspectives.
Yeah, I bet. And then on the fateful morning of February 24th, 2022, the almost unthinkable and widely feared scenario became a devastating reality.
The invasion began.
The source material starkly describes the moment the skies over Ukraine changed irrevocably as explosions rocked major cities across the country and Russian missiles began to strike targets virtually everywhere. The full-scale military invasion of Ukraine had begun. The world watched in stunned disbelief and horror, and the initial prevailing expectation, as the source material points out, was that Ukraine, facing the might of the Russian military, would quickly collapse.
That was the common wisdom.
That President Zelensky would be forced to flee the capital, and that Kyiv itself would likely fall to Russian forces within a matter of days, if not hours.
The sheer scale and brutal ferocity of the full-scale Russian invasion truly defied the expectations of many international observers and analysts. The conventional wisdom at the time largely suggested that Ukraine's relatively smaller and less well-equipped military was simply no match for the much larger and more powerful Russian armed forces.
Yeah.
And the widespread fear was that the Ukrainian government would be rapidly overwhelmed and forced to capitulate.
But that is emphatically not what happened. President Zelensky chose to stay in Kyiv.
He stayed.
He didn't go into hiding, and he certainly didn't flee the country. And the source material points to this incredibly powerful and iconic moment. His defiant and now legendary video address from the besieged capital city of Kyiv.
Ah, that video.
Standing alongside his key advisors, wearing that now instantly recognizable simple green t-shirt, he delivered a brief but utterly resolute and unwavering message to the Ukrainian people and the entire world. I am here. We are all here.
That single powerful moment was truly transformative. It was an unambiguous and deeply personal act of defiance against the invading forces,
Hmm.
a clear and unwavering commitment to remain in the capital and to fight alongside his fellow citizens.
Mm-hmm.
It immediately shattered the widely held expectation of a swift Ukrainian collapse and instantly galvanized both the Ukrainian population, instilling a renewed sense of national resolve and international public opinion, generating an outpouring of sympathy and support for Ukraine.
In that single unscripted moment, as the source material so accurately states, Volodymyr Zelensky transcended his role as just the president of Ukraine.
He became a symbol.
He instantly became a potent and enduring global symbol. A symbol of extraordinary courage in the face of overwhelming aggression, a symbol of fierce resistance against tyranny, and a symbol of unwavering hope in the darkest of hours. The world watched, the world listened intently to his words, and the world began to mobilize support for Ukraine. It was, as the source material rightly notes, the definitive beginning of a new and incredibly significant chapter, not just for Ukraine and its people, but for the entire global landscape.
His courageous and decisive decision to remain in Kyiv, to be visibly present and actively leading in the face of such extreme danger, and to communicate directly and authentically with both his own people and the international community, fundamentally and irrevocably shifted the entire narrative of the conflict.
Yeah, it really did.
It was a powerful and inspiring demonstration of leadership in its purest and most essential form.
And from that pivotal moment onwards, President Zelensky embarked on a period of tireless and relentless work. The source material paints a vivid picture of constant activity, holding crucial meetings with military commanders,
Non-stop.
making critical and often life-or-death emergency decisions, appearing on the streets of Kyiv alongside Ukrainian soldiers to bolster morale, and consistently and powerfully communicating with leaders and citizens around the globe.
His wartime leadership was immediately characterized by an unwavering and absolute commitment to the defense of his nation against the invading Russian forces.
Absolutely.
He became the central and unifying figurehead of Ukrainian resistance, personally embodying the fierce determination of the Ukrainian people to withstand the unprovoked aggression and fight for their sovereignty and very existence.
He delivered a series of incredibly powerful and emotionally resonant speeches to parliaments and congresses around the globe, skillfully tailoring his message to resonate with each specific audience.
Very effective communicator.
The source material specifically mentions his powerful references to the September 11th attacks and the attack on Pearl Harbor when addressing the United States Congress.
Right, connecting to their history.
And his effective use of quotes from Winston Churchill when speaking to the United Kingdom's Parliament. Each carefully crafted speech, the source notes, was delivered with conviction and had a profound impact on its intended audience. And these appeals for support clearly had a tangible effect.
His extensive background and performance in media undoubtedly played a significant role in his remarkable ability to communicate so effectively and persuasively on the world stage.
You think so?
Oh, definitely. He possessed an innate understanding of how to connect with his audiences on an emotional level, how to clearly and urgently articulate the dire situation facing Ukraine, and how to make a compelling and morally persuasive case for sustained international support and assistance.
Because slowly but steadily, the international community did indeed begin to respond to Ukraine's desperate pleas for help.
Mm-hmm.
The source material details the increasing flow of much-needed military equipment, humanitarian aid including food and medical supplies, and significant financial assistance from numerous countries.
The aid started flowing.
The European Union opened its borders to millions of Ukrainian refugees seeking safety. The United States and other nations began sending more advanced defensive weaponry. And ordinary citizens around the world showed their solidarity with Ukraine through demonstrations and displays of support, often symbolized by the blue and yellow Ukrainian flag.
A huge global response.
And at the very center of all of this global attention and support was Volodymyr Zelensky, tirelessly advocating for his nation.
He effectively became the voice of a nation under brutal attack, and his persistent and impassioned appeals to the international community were absolutely instrumental in mobilizing an unprecedented level of global assistance and condemnation of Russia's actions. He skillfully framed the conflict not merely as a localized territorial dispute between two nations, but as a fundamental assault on core democratic values, the principles of international law, and the very foundations of the post-World War II global order.
Back within Ukraine's borders, amidst the horrific devastation of war, the countless destroyed cities and towns, the shattered lives and broken families, and the millions of Ukrainians forced to flee their homes, President Zelensky continued to provide leadership and a vital sense of national unity.
Still leading from the front.
The source material describes his frequent visits to hospitals to meet with the wounded, his poignant meetings with grieving families who had lost loved ones, and his constant public messages of resilience and determination aimed at bolstering the spirits of the Ukrainian people in the face of unimaginable suffering.
His continued physical presence on the ground in Ukraine, his willingness to directly engage with and share in the immense suffering of his people was a crucial element of his wartime leadership.
Yeah, being there mattered.
It powerfully demonstrated his empathy, his solidarity with the Ukrainian people, and reinforced the crucial sense that he was fighting alongside them, enduring the same hardships, and not simply directing the war effort from a distant and secure location.
The source material really emphasizes the profound power of his communication during wartime, highlighting how his extensive background in media and performance enabled him to connect with both his own citizens and the global community on a deeply emotional level.
That connection again.
Effectively building widespread empathy for Ukraine's plight. He possessed a unique ability to make people genuinely care about the human cost of the conflict.
In a complex geopolitical conflict often defined by abstract strategic considerations and competing narratives, President Zelensky's remarkable ability to humanize the tragic experience of war for a global audience was incredibly impactful and strategically significant. He effectively put a relatable human face and an authentic voice to the immense suffering and the extraordinary resilience of the Ukrainian people, cutting through complex political rhetoric and resonating on a fundamental human level.
And he also did not hesitate to expose the brutal realities and the horrific atrocities being committed during the war.
Had to be done.
The source material mentions the numerous reports and documented evidence of war crimes, the discovery of mass graves, and credible allegations of torture, rape, and the deliberate murder of unarmed civilians by Russian forces. President Zelensky consistently brought these horrifying realities to the urgent attention of the international community through his direct engagement with journalists, the sharing of devastating images and videos, and his impassioned speeches to global bodies.
By meticulously documenting and relentlessly publicizing these alleged war crimes and human rights abuses, President Zelensky aimed to hold Russia accountable for its actions on the international stage and to further galvanize international condemnation and support for Ukraine.
Right.
It was a deliberate and strategically important effort to ensure that the global community fully understood the true and devastating human cost of the ongoing invasion.
Meanwhile, as the source material notes, the Ukrainian military, bolstered by increasing levels of international military assistance and demonstrating remarkable courage and determination, began to effectively fight back against the invading forces.
They held the line and more.
successfully defending key strategic areas and even managing to retake some previously occupied Ukrainian territory. The war was far from over and the challenges remained immense, but Ukraine was clearly not giving up, and neither was its determined president.
The unexpected resilience and effectiveness of the Ukrainian military, coupled with the growing and increasingly impactful international support, clearly demonstrated that the initial predictions of a swift and decisive Russian victory were inaccurate.
Absolutely.
The fight for Ukraine's fundamental sovereignty and territorial integrity was far from being decided in those early, dark days of the invasion.
The source material touches upon how President Zelensky's personal life and daily existence had been utterly transformed by the war, living under constant security threats, often in undisclosed locations and bunkers.
Unimaginable pressure.
Yet he continued his relentless work of leading the nation. And despite the numerous accolades and international recognition he received, including being named Time magazine's Person of the Year, the source quotes him as repeatedly stating, "I don't need awards, I just want peace."
Yeah.
Yet, he also clearly understood the significant symbolic value of such recognition in maintaining global attention and sustained support for Ukraine's ongoing struggle.
His consistent and unwavering prioritization of achieving a just and lasting peace for Ukraine over any personal accolades or recognition further solidified his image as a deeply committed leader focused entirely on the urgent needs and ultimate survival of his nation. The significant international recognition he received, while personally humbling, was consistently framed by him within the larger context of Ukraine's ongoing fight for its freedom and sovereignty.
And even as late as 2023, as the source material points out, President Zelensky continued his tireless diplomatic efforts, traveling extensively to meet with world leaders, addressing international conferences and forums,
Keeping the momentum going.
and consistently carrying the powerful voice of his nation to the global stage, always emphasizing the remarkable unity and unwavering determination of the Ukrainian people to continue their fight until ultimate victory.
His ongoing and persistent diplomatic engagement with the international community was absolutely crucial in maintaining and further strengthening the broad global coalition that was providing vital support to Ukraine.
Right.
He effectively became a tireless and highly persuasive advocate for his nation's cause on the world stage, constantly reminding global leaders of the stakes involved and the urgent need for continued assistance.
So, by 2023, the source material compellingly argues Volodymyr Zelensky had truly become far more than just the president of Ukraine.
He transcended the role.
He had transcended his official role to become a powerful and enduring global symbol, a symbol of extraordinary courage in the face of overwhelming odds, of fierce and unwavering resistance against tyranny and aggression, and of the fundamental human aspiration for freedom. His image began appearing on posters, murals, and in countless forms of artistic expression worldwide, solidifying his iconic status. But behind this powerful global image, as the source material rightly reminds us, was a real man carrying an almost unimaginable burden of responsibility.
The immense weight of national leadership during a brutal and existential war is almost impossible for those of us not directly experiencing it to fully comprehend.
I can't even imagine.
President Zelensky was not only responsible for overseeing complex military strategy and navigating intricate international relations, but also for maintaining the morale, ensuring the basic well-being, and embodying the collective spirit of an entire nation facing unimaginable suffering and loss.
The source material highlights how President Zelensky, despite having absolutely no prior military background or experience, rapidly adapted to the demands of wartime leadership.
Learning on the job, under fire.
diligently learning from his experienced generals and immersing himself in the complexities of military strategy and defense planning. It's a remarkable testament to his capacity for growth and his willingness to learn under the most extreme and unforgiving pressure.
His evident willingness to learn quickly and effectively and to trust and rely on the expertise of his seasoned military commanders was a clear demonstration of his pragmatism and his understanding of his own limitations. He wisely surrounded himself with those who possessed the necessary specialized skills and knowledge to guide the nation's defense efforts.
And the source material powerfully contrasts President Zelensky's unwavering decision to remain in Kiev with historical examples of other national leaders who chose to flee their capitals in times of grave danger.
That choice to stay was huge.
Emphasizing how his continued physical presence and visible leadership were absolutely crucial factors in maintaining national unity, bolstering the morale of both the military and the civilian population, and securing continued international support.
His courageous and highly symbolic choice to remain in the heart of Kyiv, to be seen by his people and by the world as standing firm in the face of imminent danger, was a profound act of solidarity and a critical factor in sustaining national unity and reinforcing international support for Ukraine's cause.
Yeah.
It sent an unmistakable and powerful message of defiance to the aggressor.
The source material also thoughtfully analyzes President Zelensky's noticeable shift in public appearance and demeanor, the transition from more formal attire to the now iconic military-style clothing,
Like green shirts.
and the adoption of a consistently more serious and resolute demeanor as a deliberate and effective way to visually convey the extreme gravity of the ongoing war and the unwavering seriousness of his commitment to leading the nation through it.
His visual presentation became a potent and instantly recognizable symbol of the entire nation's struggle for survival.
Right.
The now famous green T-shirt, often worn during his addresses, became an iconic representation of the down-to-earth resilience and unwavering spirit of the Ukrainian people in the face of overwhelming adversity.
And again, the source material underscores the profound importance of his honest and direct communication style and his evident personal courage, quoting his insightful definition of courage.
What was that again?
As not the absence of fear, but rather the conscious decision to act decisively despite the presence of fear.
Yeah. Acting despite fear.
This core principle truly seems to have been a defining element of his remarkable wartime leadership.
His consistently direct, often deeply personal, and emotionally resonant communication with both his own people and the international community resonated so powerfully, precisely because it felt undeniably authentic. He wasn't merely reciting prepared political statements. He was openly and honestly sharing his genuine concerns, his unwavering determination, and his deep empathy for the suffering of his nation.
The source material convincingly argues that President Zelensky's persistent and impassioned advocacy on the global stage was absolutely crucial in not only sustaining, but in many cases actually increasing the vital flow of military, financial, and humanitarian aid to Ukraine,
Keeping that support coming.
Furthermore, it highlights that even amidst the all-consuming demands of the war effort, he remained actively focused on the critical task of maintaining essential services and the basic functionality of the Ukrainian state within the war-torn nation.
Leading a nation engaged in a brutal war of survival necessitates managing not only the complex military conflict itself, but also the fundamental everyday needs and the basic well-being of the entire civilian population.
Yeah, keeping the lights on, essentially.
President Zelensky's continued efforts to maintain essential government functions, support critical infrastructure, and ensure the delivery of vital services despite the pervasive chaos and destruction were absolutely essential for national survival and long-term resilience.
And the source material also touches upon President Zelensky's deeply held dream of achieving a just and lasting peace for Ukraine.
The peace plan.
Referencing the comprehensive peace plan that he has presented at various international forums, consistently emphasizing the fundamental principles of justice for victims of the aggression and the restoration of Ukraine's full territorial integrity within its internationally recognized borders.
His clear and consistent vision for a future peace, firmly grounded in principles of international law, respect for Ukraine's sovereignty, and accountability for the aggressor, provides a crucial framework for any potential future negotiations and powerfully underscores the fundamental principles for which Ukraine continues to fight so resolutely.
Importantly, the source material also highlights President Zelensky's continued commitment to core democratic principles and values, even amidst the extraordinary pressures and limitations imposed by a state of war.
That's significant.
While necessary elections have been understandably delayed due to security concerns, the press has largely remained free, and opposition voices have generally continued to have the ability to express their views within the country.
Maintaining a commitment to fundamental democratic norms and principles in a time of existential national threat is an incredibly significant and demanding challenge.
Yeah.
President Zelensky's continued adherence to these values reinforces the narrative that Ukraine is fighting not just for its physical territory and national sovereignty, but also for its deeply held democratic ideals and its chosen path towards a more democratic future.
The source material astutely frames this as the remarkable balance of strength and freedom that has come to define President Zelensky's unique style of leadership during this conflict.
Strength and freedom, yeah.
And even amidst the overwhelming seriousness and immense pressure of his wartime responsibilities, the source also points out his enduring ability to maintain essential human connections and to offer moments of hope and even occasional levity through small gestures and relatable interactions.
That enduring ability to connect with people on a fundamental human level, even in the darkest and most challenging of times, is a vital and often overlooked quality of truly effective leadership. It serves as a powerful reminder of what people are fighting for and plays a crucial role in sustaining national morale and fostering a sense of collective purpose.
The source material concludes by powerfully reiterating that even into 2024, Ukraine continues to fight with an unbroken spirit and unwavering determination.
Still fighting.
A spirit powerfully encapsulated by President Zelensky's own words and actions, and that he has, without a doubt, become a truly global and enduring symbol of the universal aspiration for freedom.
His leadership during this incredibly challenging period has transcended the specific context of the war in Ukraine, resonating deeply with people around the world who cherish the fundamental values of freedom, democracy, and resolute resistance against any form of unprovoked aggression and tyranny.
So as we reflect on this incredibly detailed deep dive into the remarkable journey of Volodymyr Zelensky, several key takeaways truly stand out. We've traced his improbable rise from a comedian to the presidency.
Quite a path.
Witnessed his extraordinary courage and unwavering resilience in the face of immense pressure and danger, and observed his undeniable transformation into a powerful and globally recognized symbol of freedom. For you, our listener, this incredible story really highlights the often unpredictable nature of leadership and the profound impact that a single individual, seemingly from an unlikely background, can have on the course of history.
What's particularly insightful is how his seemingly non-traditional background, which might have initially been perceived as a significant weakness in the traditional political arena, ultimately became a powerful and unexpected strength.
Yeah, turned it on its head.
His innate ability to communicate directly, authentically, and with a genuine human touch resonated deeply with the Ukrainian public that had grown weary and distrustful of traditional political rhetoric and posturing.
And there are certainly some broader and more universal lessons that emerge from this extraordinary narrative, aren't there?
Definitely.
The source material touches upon the latent potential within seemingly ordinary individuals to achieve truly extraordinary things when faced with profound challenges, the immense and often underestimated power of words and effective communication.
The power of words, for sure.
A deeper understanding of the true meaning of courage in the face of adversity, and the fundamental idea that true leadership is ultimately about selfless service to others.
If we connect this to a wider perspective, it challenges many of our preconceived notions about who can be an effective leader and what specific qualities are most essential during times of profound crisis.
Right?
It strongly suggests that authenticity, genuine empathy for one's fellow citizens, and a clear and unwavering moral compass can be just as, if not more, powerful than traditional political experience and established power structures in galvanizing a nation and inspiring global support.
So here's a final, perhaps provocative thought for you to consider. As this truly remarkable and ongoing story continues to unfold on the world stage, what singular aspect of Volodymyr Zelensky's leadership do you personally believe will ultimately have the most enduring and lasting impact on our collective global understanding of courage, resilience, and the very nature of leadership in the 21st century? Will it be his extraordinary courage in the face of overwhelming military odds, his remarkable ability to consistently rally and sustain global support for his nation's cause, or perhaps his unwavering and deeply principled commitment to his nation's fundamental right to freedom and self-determination? What specific facets of his incredible journey will continue to shape our understanding of leadership and national resilience in the years and decades to come?
This truly raises a critical question about the long-term historical significance of his leadership, not just for the future of Ukraine, but also for the broader global political landscape. How might his extraordinary example influence and perhaps even redefine the qualities we seek in future leaders? And how will history ultimately judge his actions and his profound impact on this pivotal moment in time?
Ponder that for a moment. And as always, we encourage you to continue exploring these compelling stories of impactful figures and to thoughtfully consider how the profound lessons we uncover in these deep dives can inform your own understanding of the complex and ever-evolving world around us.